Thank you very much for making a date, as always, on the marketplace. Welcome back. Now, the Director General of the Social Security and National Insurance Trust, SNIT, Dr. John Ofori-Tinkrang, has assured bottlenecks that delay processing and payments of pensions to qualified persons will soon be cleared. According to him, the trust has set in motion some measures to address these delays. He's also been addressing issues to do with early retirees and the challenges they face with respect to accessing their pensions. Dr. Tinkrang says these issues have been referred to the regulator, the National Pension Regulatory Authority, NPRA, for redress. He was speaking at an organized Labour 2019 May Day Forum ahead of the celebrations early next month.
There is growing concern about the future of workers in the country as economic conditions continue to bite and push business owners out of business. At a forum which brought together many labor unions to discuss worker pensions here in Accra, project assistant at Frederick Ebert Stifton, Dr. Daniel Mann, advocated better working conditions and decent wages for worker groups.
We are fighting for decent work, for fair wages and for international solidarity. And I would say in this our time, where we are more connected than ever, it is also for us, the workers, to stay connected and to remember on that day, as we are preparing to go for the streets next week, that we are not alone and that together we are strong. We, the working people of the world, are the ones who are actually producing growth and producing wealth, and we should get the fair share, not only of the profits but also of the decisions.
Director General of the Social Security and National Insurance Trust, SNIT, Dr. John Ofori-Tinkrang, said his outfit has set in motion measures to address bottlenecks in assessing and processing workers' pension funds.
The reforms that I try to speak to, there's many things. First of all, I think people don't realize that everything that we do is governed by law. The pensions that we pay, the amount are all legislated and governed by law. There are issues as to people who have to retire at the age of 60. There are serious questions as to whether the current rates of contribution is enough to, sustain the scheme long into the future. So these are conversations that we need to start to have to make sure that the scheme that we're running is there to serve the purpose for which it was intended, and that is sustainable for generations to come.
On ways of broadening the scope of a pension scheme, organized labor believes an amendment to the law to compel all employers to make pension contributions for their employees is the way to go. Dr. Yauba is General Secretary of a Trades Union Congress, TUC.
If somebody employs less than 4 or 5 people, they think they are not part. But I think it's only fair that if somebody works for you, to take care of the person now and the time they retire also. So we need to change the mindset. That is one. But I think we have to change the law. The law must allow anybody who employs anybody to register the person on Social Security. And these are the issues we are going to raise on May Day.
Statistics indicate that only 14% of employers pay their employees SNIT contributions on time. And this, according to SNIT, is a reason they have resorted to some aggressive measures to retrieve these monies. The trust says it has deployed compliance officers to retrieve the monies, while a last resort at the law courts for sanctions is firmly on the cards to deal with defaulting employers. The forum ahead of a May Day celebrations was under the theme, Pensions.
Let's turn our attention to one of our top stories today. And Imani Ghana has criticized the petroleum agreement signed with international oil company Aker Energy at a media encounter on how Ghana may lose out on Africa's biggest oil find. Imani says Ghana has been shortchanged by several $billion. Senior Vice President of Imani, Kofi Bentil, who addressed the media, called for renegotiation of the contract to ensure the country benefits significantly from the find. Let's cross over now to the International Press Center, where currently there's supposed to be a question and answer session with the media at the center.
Room number 1. Thank you. One final question. One final question. Right. Yeah, thanks very much, Bentil. My name is Eko. I report for Bloomberg. From the presentation you gave us, you made mention of the fact that there are laws that are not being followed, so to say. Am I getting the picture that we have the laws, but deliberately breaking them for personal gain? Or is it that we have a fair amount of knowledge gap regards the intricacies or the nuances of the very complex oil and gas sector? Which of it is it? Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Kwakume.
My lady, the first 40 billion is here on Jubilee Fields. So Jubilee Fields, we have simulated. We are not the first person saying that. It's been published long, long ago that bad contracts to cost Ghana 40 billion of oil revenue. It's here, it's on the net. Now, the 100 billion I'm talking about now is in respect of the new fields ECA is operating, because the capacity of the new field ECA is operating is 4 times the capacity of Jubilee, which means the volume of oil in that field is 4 times the volume of oil in Jubilee. So if we are losing 40 billion, calculated by experts some few years ago and published, so what will happen to ECA? And like my good friend said, the things happening. So I told them the 30 billion is just a chicken feed. It's going to run into over $100 billion. So I hope you are clear now.
Mr. Bento, if you can react quickly to the other questions that have equally been put across.
Okay, so I remember Onassis asking what next, and he's asking who is behind and what do we estimate our chance of success to be. At this point, we're asking questions, and we have to have a certain sense or a certain attitude that there are answers. Okay, so we indeed hope that there are answers. The point I made, however, is that we are inferring our points from facts we've seen and read from documents, and then the law as it is now. And if we have, you know, a certain disagreement in the view, for instance, who owns the 30 billion in oil? Our view is that reading the law together, that oil does not belong to ECA. And we can argue that in court. And that is why we have the supervisors of our realm, the judges. We read the law and say, okay, you found the oil and you found it off your exploration period. Who does it belong to? If we disagree, we'll have the judges rule on that. So it will be a declaration of title to that piece of property.
And that was Senior Vice President of Imani Ghana, Kofi Bentil, addressing some questions from the media at the recent media encounter with the Imani Ghana on how Ghana may be losing out heavily to the petroleum agreement signed with international oil company Aker Energy. Still staying in petroleum, the Trinidad Enyira and Tome, also known as the 10 Field Partners, in consultation with the Ministry of Energy as well as Ghana National Gas Company, has announced the shutdown of the FPSO Professor John Evans Atta Mills, operating the 10 Field. The routine shutdown, which began on Monday, the 22nd of April, is intended to enable the completion of outstanding work scopes from the project phase. In a release, the main operator, Talo Ghana, says it will carry out essential maintenance works consistent with the facility's design specification to ensure ongoing reliability of the production process. According to the release, the shutdown is projected to last approximately 2 weeks and has been adequately planned to avoid any interruption of gas supply to the Ghana National Gas Company. The shutdown finally ends on the 2nd of May this year. We'll be following the situation closely and bring you up to date with the development. Turning away from oil and gas now, the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry has paid a working visit to Unilever Ghana as part of moves to foster business-to-business relations between the Chamber and manufacturing community. The president of the Chamber, Dr. Nana Appiah Danka, also tells Joy Business the Chamber will, in the coming weeks, be engaging manufacturing firms on some new reforms needed to shore up productivity. Charles Aite was part of the visit and has come through with this report.
Here with the president. Ghana National Chamber of Commerce to help us understand the purpose for visit to Unilever Ghana, as we will also engage the representative from Unilever as well. So first of all, Doctor, how do you see this particular business visit to Unilever? What premise the visit to Unilever?
As part of our program to visit or to make industrial tour, this is one of them. And you have been accompanying us to various companies and industries. So this month, we decided to come to Unilever and B5. Okay. So this morning we are here with Unilever. Unilever has been in existence for the past or more than 100 years, sure. And it's provided and strengthened the socio-economic development of this country. Yeah. And most of us even don't know what they have been doing here. All that we see is their products. Yeah. So we wanted to come and familiarize ourselves and to also to say a big thank you to them and encourage them and to see if there are any challenges that they are going through and if we have to support, especially looking at the number of employment they are creating for Ghanaians, and especially highly impressed about the biomass they are doing here, and the kind of tonnage they are producing for steam and all that. They have just also
keep moving, so we don't keep your head as. But I'll come to you shortly. But sir, I mean, you have heard the side from the Chamber of Commerce in terms of how prepared they are to support manufacturing firms like that with Unilever. How has it been so far from your end?
No, so for us, as he had indicated, we're really in the business of making affordable quality products to the consumer, and that has been the aim of Unilever all along. But most importantly for us is ensuring that our environment is sustained. So while I would want to talk about the product that we are producing, I'd like to call out the fact that Unilever is really on the USLP campaign, which is the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. So you'd have heard about it in our brands, looking about Lifebuoy, where you have the Global Hand Washing Day. You've heard about it about Oral, when we look about brush twice a day. You've heard about, well, Omo, that is good, and the campaign we are doing around children and all of that. But I wanted to show also from the factory perspective the things that we are doing to also help and drive that USLP plan.
So beyond this, where do we see manufacturing in Ghana? Are we getting there?
No, of course. I mean, if you look at where Unilever has come from when it comes to manufacturing, we've recently just opened our new Oral plant, which was opened by His Excellency the President of Ghana. We also commissioned our new personal care dryer as well as the biomass plant. So I'll say when it comes to manufacturing, we are doing well, and we are really getting support from the Chamber of Commerce to help foster that relationship and take us to the next level.
But ending with you, Doctor, finally, where do we see the Chamber's support for the manufacturing sector moving on? We've seen your business visits over the past few years. Where do we see you moving on with this initiative?
We are using members, we are using non-members, if I say so, I mean the private sector, and also to move with the government of the day mantra agenda, which is 1D, 1F. And I think that this agenda is at various stages. So we have given support from EXIM, Ghana Commercial Bank, and other financial institutions to support those who have been able to come up with business plans. And I think that come 1 year or 2 years time, we'll see all these things, happening on the ground. And the motive is to create more employment and also to improve on exports and reduce imports.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
President. And he's the president of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So it's all about the manufacturing sector in that regard. Beyond all these things remain specific issues that most of the manufacturing giants would want government to address. Issues regarding the exchange rates, which of course has been a topical matter, and of course that's of the benchmark price on import duties. We shall be interrogating most of these issues shortly, but this is it, the business tour between the Chamber of Commerce and Unilever Ghana. I'm Charles Aite for Joy Business.
Time to turn attention to some financial matters, and depreciation of the cedi against major trading foreign currencies had some ripple effects on Ghana's economy. One such effect is on the foreign currency debt component, or simply put, what we borrow externally. The IMF, together with the World Bank, has categorized Ghana at a high risk of debt distress. But beyond this, what else can we learn about Ghana's borrowing from the external community? What's the size of our foreign debts, and who do we borrow from the most? Joy Business researcher Philip Namfuri joins us with some more explanation. But before then, let's take a look at some highlights of the countries and their risk of debt distress, and to know which other African countries are at high risk of debt distress. Right, so these are some African countries classified as high risk distressed countries. Now, so as I said earlier, Philip Namfuri has joined us here. Now, Philip, why should we be exactly concerned about high debt risk country?
Okay, so external debt forms part of the debt profile of countries. But if you look at Ghana, for example, if you look at our debt profile, external debt profile, you'll be shocked to know that we have about 17.9 billion worth, that's USD, US dollars, worth of debt out there. And we put together some infographics just to show our viewers and listeners what's going on. Yeah, so if you look at the first one, you see that our total external debt is 17.9 billion as of December 2018. And 50% of this is our external debt. So if you look at Ghana's whole debt profile, 50% of that is just external debt in USD terms. And all this data is from the Bank of Ghana's statistical bulletin. If you look at who we are borrowing from the most, you would realize that there are a large number of people we borrow from. So multilateral creditors, you see bilateral creditors, you see commercial creditors, and you see international capital markets. So if you look at the multilateral creditors, that's 6.5 billion US dollars as of December 2018. Multilateral creditors, essentially the World Bank, IMF, AFDB. Bilateral creditors, the countries we borrow from, we have about 1.2 billion of exposure towards them. Export credit agencies, 1.2 billion, and other concessional borrowers, 1.7. Commercial creditors, that's maybe international banks, Standard Chartered, etc., 2.3 billion. And most importantly, international capital markets, 5 billion US dollars. So if you look at the range, the people who borrow from the most are the multilateral creditors. That's the AFDB, IMF, World Bank, and followed by the international capital markets. So when we're going out and we're issuing our Euro bonds and all that, then it becomes part of the people we borrow from. So all this put together makes up the 17.9 billion we have garnered from the external community. But the importance here is that as you borrow from the external community, you have to service these debts in foreign currency.
Are we doing that?
Yes. So what happens then? Anytime you take these funds out, you affect your local currency, obviously. And if you're not bringing enough in and you're going to service these debts, then we're going to have depreciation of the cedi. So anytime we are servicing our debts in foreign currency, we have to make sure that there's enough on hand to ensure that we don't depreciate the cedi too much. And if you look on this, you realize that debt service as a percentage of exports and goods and services is 12.38%. Obviously, it's gone up a bit, but some will regard this as high. All this means is that if our external creditors were asking for their loans, this is how much of our exports, this is how much of our debt this is worth. Okay. And if you look at debt service as a percentage of GDP, it's just 0.35%. Debt service is how much we are paying on interest, loans, etc., as a percentage of the total value of the economy. So you see that external debt's really high, and it must be done well.
So what exactly is Ghana's size of its external debt, and which country or which areas do we borrow from most?
So that's 17.9 billion is the size, and we borrow most from the multilateral creditors. That's e.g. the World Bank, AFDB, followed by the international financial markets, Emmanuel.
And what's the way forward?
What's the way forward is to reprofile our debt and ensure that what we are borrowing for, we're using it for productive purposes so that we can pay back in the future.
When you say reprofiling, we also heard reprofiling earlier when the finance minister decided to reprofile some of our short-term debts into long-term. What does it mean?
Okay, so we change the maturity profile. So extending short-term debts to long-term debts so that it gives us more room to breathe, so that we don't have to service debts on the short term very quickly as we were doing in the past. Then it gives us more room to gather our funds and pay back in the long term.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That analysis, in-house researcher Philip Namfo will bring us up to speed with Ghana's debt profile and also a picture of how other African countries have been classified as high-risk distressed countries. Now, a scientist is calling for review of the nutrition. Now, expert Professor Richmond Ni-Oka-Aiti says this is crucial to ensure beneficiary families eat such foods. Professor Aiti spoke at a workshop in Kumasi. Kwesi Debra has more.
Recent studies in Ghana show most households depend on traditional markets to source their food, including processed. Wide variety, lower price and proximity dictate preference. Professor Aite believes non-segmentation of the market has done little to encourage fresh food consumption.
There's been done an evaluation of our LEAP program that shows that a good chunk of it, when people take the money, is actually used for buying food. What we don't know is the kind of food that they are buying with it, because we don't have a condition that says that you need to use it for this kind of food or the other. Perhaps we could do better by learning from others, but you can't segment the market. It's a private place, but ensure that you then put in a mechanism that makes the fresh produce more appealing. One way of doing that is to find a way of giving subsidies.
Kamel Mohammed of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture urges urban farmers to make fresh foods available for local consumption.
Urbanization is taking a toll on us, and hence most of this ultra-processed food being readily available for us to make use of. And I think if you encourage people to go into the urban farming, i.e. rearing and intensive rearing of poultry or other ruminants and production for community consumption and home consumption.
President of Ghana Nutrition Association, Dr. Kingsley Preko, noted the country's food regulations have failed to match changing food environment.
Yeah, here is the case that we are having quite a changing food marketing environment, changing food chains and stuff like that in the country, that the older existing laws have not really previewed some of these happenings that we are looking at. If you look at food regulation, yes, there are a lot of food regulation exercises that are going on, but you could see much focus on processed foods that are coming in the country and all that.
Researching obesogenic food environment is a 3-year joint study between Ghana and South Africa. The program, funded by International Development Research Center, seeks to understand changing nature of food marketed in poor communities in both countries. Drivers of changes and potential lift to improve healthiness of local food market are among the objectives. The second phase of the program focused on retail, energy and value chain governance. The third phase analyzes governance and political economy and identifies policy opportunities. Researchers embarked on a learning journey, visiting Dako farms in Kumasi, food warehouses, vendors and market centers. Principal investigator Dr. Reginald Ajete believes it will equip stakeholders with a tool to better address identified problems.
So as part of the ROFI project, we are embarking on this learning journey in Ghana, where we are trying to go to the producers of food and to see how things work around there, and also to look at the various markets where foods are retailed and where foods are sold.
Reporting for JoyNews, Kwesi Debra.
And here we end this afternoon's edition of The Marketplace. Many thanks for your company. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji Yafi. Have a good afternoon.